Welcome to R&R Live and Life. In this episode we leave the pastoral and war history behind to spend half a day enjoying the natural beauty of the Katherine Gorge, and what a morning it turned out to be. To do justice to the gorge, I have kept it to an episode by itself, especially as I found the scenery, geological history and the sheer magnitude of it beyond words. Katherine Gorge, now officially known as Nitmiluk Gorge, is not a single gorge, but a spectacular 13-gorge system carved by the Katherine River, with the main, most accessible section being about 12 kilometres long within the Nitmiluk National Park, with the park covering an area of around 3,000 square kilometres, even bordering the northern edge of Kakadu National Park. The full system extends much further, with one trail, the Katbula Trail, covering 58 kilometres in distance along the gorge system to Edith Falls, fringed with paperbark and pandanus. Rick and I took a boat cruise in the main gorge system through the first two of the 13 gorges. As we were staying just out of Katherine, we had a short 20-minute drive to reach the gorge, where we caught the 9 o'clock tour. Yes, you do need a Northern Territory Parks Pass to enter the park. This is separate from those of other national parks. There were quite a few information displays that explained the geology, landscape and Aboriginal history of the national park to read, but we decided we would read them on our return when we had more time. The geological history of Nitmiluk Gorge began approximately 1.8 to 1.4 billion years ago, when sediments were deposited in a shallow sea, creating the sandstone and conglomerate layers that make up the plateau. Kombolgi sandstone is the geological base for Nitmiluk and Leland or Edith Falls, laid down when there was a huge river delta about 1,650 million years ago. Sand and rocks tumble down the river, with heavy rocks falling to the bottom, with the lighter sand being carried further. Over the years, layers of rocks, pebbles, sand and silt built up. As old sediment layers were compressed under new layers, they formed the hard sandstone and conglomerate of Kombolgi Formation. Sandstone was made up of small, evenly sized grains, while conglomerates are made up of a mixture of sizes of rounded fragments. The formation is up to 2,000 metres deep in places, but averages 900 metres in thickness. These layers were deposited horizontally, resulting in the visible horizontal bands in the rock faces. The gorges themselves started forming around 120 million years ago, with the Katherine River beginning to carve its current path about 1 to 25 million years ago by following intersecting joints and faults in the sandstone. The river's course is a zigzag pattern, following a course along the lines of least resistance, and erosion has widened side fissures and faults, creating the system of 13 deep gorges with rapids and falls carved in places through the ancient sandstone. Weathering and erosion, particularly from the powerful monsoonal rains, have continued to widen the main river course and have carved out numerous side fissures and valleys along other joints and faults. Once we had boarded, the tour guide explained the ancient heritage of the landscape and its significance to the Katherine region and to the Jawoyn people. We silently made our way past unique rock formations, spectacular ancient sandstone and conglomerated rock layers, with distinctive walls of red and brown quartzite and sandstone in the escarpments above the river. We saw patches of lush monsoon forest inhabiting the gullies and giant cracks in the gorge walls. It was breathtaking scenery. On the walls of the gorge was a brown floodwater mark from recent flooding earlier in the year. The sheer height of the cliffs, the cave structures that have been carved out of the sandstone, or where erosions had eroded away sections, even the fissures between the formations were incredible. The tour guide explained the dreaming stories and the geology of the Gorge, pointing out relevant spots along the way. While on our cruise, a fellow sitting behind us made the comment as to why you would take photos of rocks. Rocks? We were in one of the most stunning places in Australia, and who would not want to take photos? Creating reminders of our memories so that we can revisit them at a later date. Rick and I have often discussed this about his memory versus mine, as I tend to forget more easily than he does. He has a hard drive full of our travels backed up in his memory, while I, on the other hand, need to have some sort of reminder, hence the photos. The gorge was such an enormous place that I had difficulty taking it all in, so needed somehow to revisit it. We did get to see a freshwater crocodile basking on the bank, though not altogether happy with our visit. We were told that there were quite a few crocodiles in most parts of the river, as they nest along the banks, but freshwater crocodiles are harmless to humans. Saltwater crocodiles, on the other hand, are dangerous. With their wide snouts, they regularly enter the river during the wet season, when the water levels are very high, with the gorges interconnected. Saltwater crocodiles are subsequently trapped and relocated to the lower levels closer to the coast at the onset of the dry season as the water levels in the river fall and the gorges become separated. We did see 2 traps on the edge of the river, but no saltwater crocodiles. I'm not a skilled or great photographer, only taking quick captures of what I see around me. But I do try to express the wonder of what is out there, whether it be the scenery, geology, historical, or even just everyday things like the incredible texture of bark on some trees or the shape and colour of flowers. In the long run, I hope that maybe it does improve my mental well-being in the future when I reminisce about our travels. To put into words or to describe the shadows, sunlight, even the reflections on the water, I find it difficult. So photos for me are a great way to do this, and it has the added bonus of being a form of journaling or diary writing, both of which I am not good at. As we motored up the gorge, I spent quite a lot of time trying to make sense of and the reason why the planet had been created and evolved into such spectacular geology. I find the evolution of landforms and the processes that created them intriguing. Then the geography, full of vastly different physical and cultural environments, with landscapes so very different in structure, composition, and earth history, all within such a short space here in the gorge. Whether you believe in the natural science that explains the physical mechanisms of what is the earth and by extension the universe, versus the biblical history that deals with the moral and spiritual reality of cultures of what ought to be, being in the gorge made me wonder how Dreamtime and creation stories can try to answer where it all came about. When we got to the end of the first gorge system, we then had to exit the boat and take a short easy walk over the rocks to the second gorge, where we caught a second boat to take us further up the gorge to the next rocky barrier, before returning to the boat in the first gorge. On our return from the cruise, Rick and I walked to the top of Bayua Lookout, up a short steep climb involving many steps, to be rewarded with stunning views of the first gorge, the 17-mile Valley Gorge system, and the escarpment opposite. We returned to the bottom to spend time reading the information boards and then treating ourselves to an ice cream before making our way back towards town. In the end, I had taken so many photographs that I ran out of ways to describe our cruise and the enormous system that makes up the gorge. I kept coming back to amazing, but what a morning we had had. This whole area was full of interesting things to see and do, so we'll fill the rest of the episode with details about Katherine. The Katherine River drops around 384 metres over its 328 kilometre length and is the main tributary of the Daly River, that eventually flows into the Timor Sea at Anson Bay. The Daly River system forms one of the largest river systems in the Northern Territory, with significant groundwater stores in aquifers such as the Ulu and Tyndall limestone that discharge into many of the rivers within the region, providing dry season flow for parts of the river system and some culturally significant springs. The Daly region is highly groundwater dependent and one of the few perennial river systems in northern Australia, with water in the region currently used for a variety of agricultural and industrial purposes, as well as sustaining three important wetlands. Pastoralism, primarily beef cattle grazing, occurs extensively in the area, with horticultural crops grown in the region including sorghum, peanuts and mangoes. There has recently been an increase in irrigated agriculture in the region, particularly for sandalwood. I was interested to find out more about the Katherine River after our cruise, as it runs through Katherine. During the flood of 1998, the Katherine River peaked at 21.78 metres above sea level. We stood on the footpath on one side of the bridge looking across at the pylon and railway bridge to see where the water level reached. So much water coming down the Katherine River out of Katherine Gorge, but after being in the gorge this morning, we could certainly picture the huge volume of water that raced through the area. Then to walk across the rail line and stand in the very spot that was once completely immersed in floodwaters was quite a surreal feeling, especially when you could look down to where the river was currently flowing far below. Katherine has been a meeting place for Aboriginal people for many thousands of years and remains so today. This can be seen across the region through the ancient art and sacred sites throughout the land. European settlement began around 1872 with the construction of the overland telegraph line, and the town grew around the railway line and bridge established in 1926 and further developed around the RAF base, Tyndall. Major floods have been a recurring challenge, notably the devastating 1998 flood. With much of Katherine's history tied up in the railway, the town site of Katherine itself has been moved twice during the railway's construction, only finding its eventual home in 1926. During World War II, Katherine was a military base, with vegetables grown along the river for troop supplies. The wartime situation formed the basis for intensive experimentation in cropping along the riverbanks. During the war, Katherine marked the southernmost point of the Japanese bombing raids on the Northern Territory. It was bombed once in the early afternoon of the 22nd of March 1942. The galleon store at Knott's Crossing still bears shrapnel scars and a bomb crater from the raid. The strategic importance of Katherine after the outbreak of the war in the Pacific promoted immediate improvements to the airfield. However, due to the continuing inadequacies of the airfield, two new bomber bases were constructed. The first at Manbaloo Airfield, that was completed in 1943, and the second at Tyndall, completed in December 1944. After the first Japanese raids on the top end in 1942, the Army was made responsible for supplying meat for all three services across the territory. The Army placed contracts with suppliers at Pine Creek, Mataranka, and the North Australian Meat Company at Manbaloo Station, part of the giant British Vesties Company. Construction of abattoirs and freezing chambers began in March 1942. By 1944, about 700 head of cattle a week were being processed and dispatched to units up and down the track. Today, the town services many cattle stations and farms and receives produce from as far away as Wyndham, 480 kilometres west in Western Australia. A large-scale dairy closed in 2001 and was replaced by a depot for the export of live cattle. What an experience we have had in Katherine. There had been so much to see and do, and I have only touched on a very small part of what we did. I hope you have enjoyed our cruise up the Katherine Gorge. It really is a must-see place to visit. Give us a thumbs up if you have enjoyed this episode, and please leave a comment. Join us next episode as we begin our journey west along the Victoria Highway into the Victoria Daly region. Stay safe and enjoy life. Cheers for now. Rick and Rosemary. R&R, living life.